Welcome. And the question today from one careful owner not me is: solicitors/lawyers, what's the worst case of, you should have mentioned this sooner, you've experienced? Serious. Hi, this is Derek. I just put the Drama Llama, Fred, back in his llama pen, so that I can do this quick video for you with some of the stuff that Fred found on Reddit earlier today. Oh boy, let's get ready for some drama. Shaba8 answered with: spent several hours zealously arguing that my client was severely disabled and couldn't work due to a back injury. It was so bad that the poor dude couldn't even sit in a chair throughout the entire proceedings. Rest my case. Opposing counsel calls in a deck representative who proceeds to produce record after record of my client's deer hunting activities. He sat in a tree in freezing weather for many hours, shot and killed multiple deer, and transported their carcasses out of the woods all on his own. Shaking my head. What an idiot, all he had to do was lay low. My buddy used a woman's own Facebook post and had a doctor take the stand to explain why someone with a debilitating back injury wouldn't be able to run half marathons. Tough Mudders, and do CrossFit regularly. She lost her car accident lawsuit. People like this are infuriating because right-wing traitor lunatics use these 1 in a million examples to make it as difficult as possible for decent people to get the help they actually need. It's still the traitors' fault for being traitors, but folks like this are also trash. We also had a client who claimed he couldn't sit, he would limp into our office, cried, said his life was ruined, etc. Opposing counsel sends us a videotape of him working on his car. Walking perfectly normal while food shopping, playing with his kids, running, and having a grand old time. Until he has to go see their doctor, and then they film at him limping, barely walking, and wincing in pain in the parking lot. We fired that client. Into O deep but I can swim answered with: one more for you. My first ever hearing in front of a judge as an attorney was a Social Security disability appeal. My client had been crushed at work a few years ago and his entire left side of his body was mangled. He had post-traumatic stress disorder from seeing his dad shoot himself as a kid, loads of mental health issues and physical ones as well. Just my luck, I get the biggest dirkhead judge the SSA has to offer. It's sort of an unspoken rule that you don't interrupt someone's opening statement. You don't make objections, you don't interrupt. Well, I get 3 sentences into my opening and I was listing his conditions, and the judge screams over me: you forgot one, what about the drug abuse disorder? When was the last time your client did heroin? I froze for a half a second, glared at said client, and said, well, Your Honor, I didn't mention that, similar to how I didn't mention his pre-diabetes and seasonal allergies. It isn't relevant to his ability to work as he hasn't abused drugs in several years. Additionally, he admitted that he used drugs to cope with his mental health disorders, which he has taken much better control over since he began counseling. I was darn proud of that response. My client won the case. I called to tell him. His girlfriend answered and informed me he was in jail for the next 36 months for stealing a car. Ha ha ha, roller coaster from start to finish. I'm sorry. That must have been crushing to hear. Sounds like the guy was getting his poop together. My brother-in-law was a legal aid lawyer. He spent about a year working his butt off to help this 19-year-old who had a horrible story, etc. He got him a lot of help, etc., and the one major case was finished and got him probation or something, back in school, etc. He went above and beyond. All kinds of extra hours. If you didn't know, legal aid lawyers don't make much. The guy murdered someone like 2 days later. He quit being that type of lawyer soon after. It was pretty soul-crushing, to be honest. You should hear him rant about people who don't want to help themselves. That guy was like the last straw. Shake Your Rumba answered with: a person involved in a motorcycle accident who sustained legitimate but not serious injuries. CCTV showed the incident. They were very much not at fault. They decided this was their big payday, claimed they could barely walk, had post-traumatic stress disorder, serious back trouble, would never work again, the whole 9 yards. They neglected to tell their lawyer they had been, first, working a manual labor job, second, riding motorcycles again, third, did a bungee jump. All of which we caught on video / they documented via social media. They did not get the multi-million-pound settlement payment they expected and were pursued for fraud. It was a fun phone call after we sent the tape full of evidence. FFS, how hard can it be to lay low for a few months and collect? F, people are dumb. The Way of the Viking answered with. Co-suspect was defended by another lawyer, who argued in his closing arguments that there should have been a police lineup during the investigation, since the suspects were brought into the station when the victim was still there. Client turns to me and says that there had been a lineup and they were not identified. This lineup was about 30 minutes after the alleged robbery. Nothing in the file suggests a negative police lineup. We do trials based on written statements by police. They are hardly ever in court to testify. I mention what my client said in my closing arguments. The prosecutor's mouth drops and she becomes pale. Hearing is suspended for further investigations. Couple of weeks later, police officers are testifying in shame that they forgot to finish the report on the police lineup. The prosecutor's case is thrown out for irreparable harm to the trial. Interesting in that this was information that would have ended the case in your client's favor much earlier had they told you. And that sounds like typical cop behavior, hiding things that would hurt their cases. Qualindolio answered with. Learned while my client was on the stand that she had a little bit of a drug problem. She disclosed immediately after that she was going to fail the drug test the judge ordered because she had been a daily meth user for years. She was stunningly gorgeous, had held the same job for over 25 years, and was a rock star mom to a kid with special needs. Unlike 90% of my clients, she was always on time, responsive, and did everything I asked. To date, the only high-functioning meth user I've met. But F, that hearing would have gone quite differently had she mentioned that to me beforehand. For your information, most of the time we can deal with bad facts. At the very least we can give you the advice you need to hear. But there isn't much I can do with surprise facts in the middle of a trial. I guess I would be considered a high-functioning drug user, as I smoke weed almost every day. When I was going through custody with my ex, I told my lawyer straight up. He asked if there was anything he should know. I said, not sure how relevant this is, but I'm a regular midnight toker. He asked if my ex knew and I said, he at least knows I'm no stranger to weed, because his mom and I got high when I went to Juarez with her. He said that was all he needed to know, lol. Lawduck one answered with. I was representing a man that was accused of sexually assaulting the young daughter of his girlfriend, who was married to another man. The key issue was whether or not my client's DNA profile should have been at the scene. Only skin cell tissue had been recovered, not seminal/bodily fluid DNA. And it was not an exact match, but rather a match to a profile that included him. A few weeks before trial he finally told me that the woman's other son was likely his. They had been having an affair for more than 5 years. The fact that the boy shared his DNA was a pivotal reason that the DNA profile would have been present. A big issue was a language barrier as my client did not speak English. And we used an interpreter for all of our communications. So what happened next? It ended in a hung jury and the prosecution refused to refile charges. When speaking with the jury afterwards, they admitted they didn't fully understand the DNA situation. When the judge explained it to them, they said they would have acquitted had they better understood. Whatever kind of CSI person that was involved in that case. Shouldn't they have gathered DNA from everyone who lives in the house so as to exclude them as suspects? They should have. The investigation was horrible. As soon as the mother made the allegation, they put on blinders and believed her no matter what leads I gave them. Holy poop. I know the main point to this is the sexual assault. But trash people like this make marriage seem like such a great idea. Monstera Deliciosa answered with. My favorite, the plaintiff on the other side. So no attorney-client privilege issues here, was in court telling the judge that each of my clients, on separate occasions, raped and impregnated her without her consent. This was already highly improbable because one of my clients was biologically female and couldn't have impregnated her. Then, in court, in front of the judge, this plaintiff abruptly mentions that she's never met my clients. Easiest win I ever got. Multiple people she never met raped and impregnated her at the same time, while one of them was a female. So, on a scale from 1 to all of the drugs, how high was she? Never met as in we haven't been formally introduced, of course. Normally the standard line is, "Hi, my name is James and I'll be your rapist for today." Our manager answered with, "The lawsuit was the first time I heard about the case/claim. I called up the manager and asked, and he denied knowing anything. I held 3 separate interviews with him and his staff and all said nothing happened that day. We prepared a defense of BS. At the manager's deposition, after the standard state your name, etc. The first effing question the plaintiff's attorney asked was, "Do you recognize my client?" "Oh yeah. Now that I see her I remember." Troubled Pussy 93 answered with, "Client asked a friendly company to forge documents to provide evidence of a fair rate for defect rectification works. A whistleblower told the Corruption Investigations Board. Destroyed their credibility for the whole claim even where there was good grounds. And ended up in a whole criminal investigation. Great billings for us though." Starry Decises answered with, "Failed to mention that he'd had a threesome with his ex-wife and her boyfriend 2 weeks before divorce proceedings. We didn't learn this until the ex was on the stand. Such a fun surprise. I'm really stupid, so I need some backstory and as to what that has to do with the case. If you were to have sex with your wife and her boyfriend, you would be condoning, or permitting, adultery, by the very act of joining in. If you permit adultery, then you cannot reasonably say, in that particular state or legal system, my wife does not deserve alimony because she was cheating on me. At least, that's how I read it." Mr. Jeff answered with, "Defending a tenant from eviction, the client kept saying she was being evicted because the police were called after her abusive ex showed up. That's actually discrimination, leaving the landlord liable if that was the reason. But landlord's attorney says they're evicting for cause, not the ex thing, and asks whether the tenant told us what she did. I go back and ask if there is anything she hasn't told us. Well, maybe it's the fire I started in the laundry room. I was really coked up and the security footage looks bad." This is about 5 minutes before the judge calls the case from the bench. Woof. And finally, Alice Spence answered with, "When it comes out your client's new boyfriend is a pedophile right in the middle of the custody trial, it's really fun. Like maybe next time mention his record to me so I can drop you as a client before I lose all credibility in front of the court." Well, there you have it. A perfectly great question answered by a bunch of fine and honorable citizens. Help support this channel by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. And hit that silly little bell as well to ensure you get the latest videos as they come out. Fred is always finding stuff for me to post regularly. So this is Derek signing off. Thanks for watching. Good grief, it sounds like Fred is out of his pen again. I think he found more drama for me to share with you. See you soon.